to Tomorrow's People, the podcast brought to you by Personio and me, Perry Timms. Everything starts with people, and ventures start with people who are entrepreneurs. Arko Van Brakel is our next guest, and on this episode, we will explore not only his journey through entrepreneurialism, but his take on what the future of work looks like for tomorrow's people. Arko Van Brakel, thank you and welcome to Tomorrow's People, podcast brought to you by Personio. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here in this podcast.
Oh, wow.
I think you are one of the most inspiring people in terms of the future of work. So, and then being in your podcast, I really love it. I really was looking forward to this conversation, actually.
Very nice. Well, that's a lovely way to start because it's mutual. Because I was thinking I can't wait to hear what Arko's got in terms of stories of the past, but also visions of the future. So I think that's probably where we'll end up. But for now, Arko, what's really hot for you? What's occupying you right now in terms of work and passions and things that you're involved in?
Well, what's puzzling me most is actually how we can use the principles of self-organization to solve the issues in society.
Right.
And that sounds like a big thing, which basically is the truth. But if we look at all the challenges the world is facing at the moment with the climate change, and then while doing the energy transition, keeping our wealth up to date so we don't get poverty because of the energy price, these sort of things. These are wicked problems, complicated problems. And I found out also in the work that I do that there's only one way to solve these problems, and that is a better way of collaboration and cooperation between people. Yeah. And if we can manage to use all the visions, all the ideas, all the inventions of the people around us, we can solve these issues. But what I see, and I don't know how that's in the UK or in other countries, I see in the Netherlands many leaders with best intentions trying to push through their ideas and their vision, and then ignoring all the ideas and all the inventions that are there of the other people in the world. Yeah. And that's really blocking the conversation. It's annoying people. It's not effective. But if we can manage to convince our leaders that they should use the talents and the visions and the ideas of all the other people, then I think we can speed up all these processes, like what I said, energy transition or circular economy, these sort of important issues. Yeah. So that's what's puzzling me most.
Wow. And it is a really, really big, I guess you'd say, sort of mountain to climb. We might use that sort of metaphor. But you and I are familiar enough with the world of work, because I did a little calculation between us, Arko. The listeners can work this out. We've got 111 years on this planet together. So I'd like to think there's another 111 between us as well. So we've got to put these things right. And I guess we could say that political systems, social systems, economic systems, education systems, health systems, they're all in some state of challenge, if not some decay, and some that are really, really struggling with the 2023 plus version of the world, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And what we see in many organizations like healthcare or education, but healthcare is perhaps a nice example. Yeah. In our country, the social insurance system is being run by insurance companies, basically.
Right, yeah.
And they, of course, have to report the results. Yeah. And for that reason, our nurses, our doctors, they have to spend... they can spend 20 minutes on a client, on a patient. Is that patient is the right word?
Yeah.
It is, yeah. But from these 20 minutes that they spend on such a person who really needs help, and needs care, 10 minutes is administration. Right. And for that reason, the pressure on time and the pressure on their agenda is so high that they don't enjoy work anymore. They don't feel they can deliver the right quality. And we are in an aging society, so the number of people that can do the job is decreasing. So, and that is a very toxic combination. So the rules and the financial rules basically that dominate the healthcare industry in our country actually take away the working pleasure of the people and it's increasing the working pressure of the people.
Yeah.
And for that reason, not many people want to work in healthcare anymore. And because we are an aging society, the need for more people is growing because older people need more care.
Yeah.
So it's a very dangerous situation. And we could easily solve that by taking away a little bit of the rules and of the administration that goes along with the rules to relieve the working pressure of these people.
Yeah.
That's a very simple example how rules actually in an old-fashioned system is blocking the quality of work.
Yeah, and you hit on a number of things there that I'll pick up, but what I took as a kind of an overarching message from that is about liberation. It's about liberating people to do the work they really want to do, and so that people who receive that work are liberated in how they can access it and make the best of it. You talked about wicked problems right at the start, and that is one, but it is all about outdated systems, as you say. You and I know there are some pioneering people who are trying to bring in some of these new systems and so on. And one of them is our sort of mutual connection, which is Ricardo Semler and your close affiliation with the Semco Style Institute. Now, the reason I've brought that in is because partly I think you co-founded it back in the day, but also it stands to change the system of work, doesn't it?
Yeah, oh, definitely. That's the whole reason that I started with Ricardo. Actually, I was for the first time confronted with the Semco style in the year 2000.
Yeah.
I just had written my first book with the title. It's a Dutch book, so you can't. Has never been translated. It was called New Heroes, Nieuwe Helden in Dutch, New Heroes.
Yeah.
Because I found out as an internet entrepreneur at that time that running an exponentially growing data-driven organization can be done with the old working process that we were used to. Yeah. And the old-fashioned leadership didn't match the culture of the web at that time. Yeah. And now, it, of course, has changed a bit because the internet is also a dangerous place now for some people. But in 2000, that was not the case yet. Yeah. It was completely based on trust, collaboration, sharing knowledge, sharing profits. It was a worldwide network. The sky was the limit. But sharing knowledge, and build that philosophy on trust, What many people don't know is that the whole internet protocol is based on trust, Yeah. If you and I send each other an email, our computers in a split second say, well, I can trust that guy. Yes. So that's how the internet is organized. That's how it could be organized so non-hierarchical as the internet is. Yeah. So that's a very, very crucial element of the online culture. Yeah. And traditional leaders had great difficulties building trust in their organization or sharing knowledge or collaborating with people. So that's why I thought, well, a new sort of guts is needed. And that's why I called the book New Heroes, because it's not the macho type of guts, but it's more a soft type of guts, to be vulnerable and to be friendly and to give trust to people. And then I'd written the book. And then someone gave me the book of Ricardo, Maverick, and said, well, Arko, you've written a nice book about it, but this guy has been doing it already for nearly 20 years. That's how I was first confronted with Ricardo. Yeah. And years later, I was CEO of the BAAK, which is a quite famous Dutch leadership institute, a training institute. Yeah. It's very old. And I've just started as CEO there, and then I suddenly saw a documentary about Ricardo on television. And it was about happiness at work. And he was an example of creating more happy people on the work floor. And I thought, hey, wait a minute, that's the guy from the book. Yeah. And I booked him as a keynote speaker on an event that we organized. We organized it totally around him. It was called Ricardo Semler and Friends. Nice. So we had some other people who are doing the same thing in the Netherlands, a trust-based organization, self-organization. It was an extremely inspiring day. Yeah. We had 2 times in one day a whole theater filled with fans of Ricardo. We had a dinner and our prime minister was there, and then all the other CEOs came as well. And then Ricardo and I became friends. And he said, well, Arko, shall we bring our vision of self-organization to the world in a new company? So I quit at the BAAK in 2016, and we started the Semco Institute, and it's now active in 31 countries.
Wow.
I must admit, in some countries we have sent only one invoice, so it's not that we are big in every country, but still in 31 countries in 7 years' time. That's quite good, I think. Yeah.
And do you think that is tapping into, I'll use the sort of German phrase zeitgeist, a sense and essence that people are really looking for all those things you talked about, the collaborative spirit, the shared knowledge, the trust, the sense that this is how a work should be? Do you think that's what's going on, and why there's perhaps 31 countries present in trying to change the working system?
Well, to be honest, I think it has been like that for ages, to be honest.
Right.
Because, a tribe 3,000 years ago, there were no managers in the tribe. There were leaders, but no managers.
Yeah.
You know, so, and if I look at our own, we can be a little bit proud, but also not proud of that period, because our golden age was when the VOC, the United East Indian Company, we were trading it, but also doing slavery things. So we're not proud of that part.
No.
But the funny thing is that the ship wharfs that actually were building our trading ships, these were self-organized organizations, and we had the most advanced sailing ships ever. And that was because self-organizing teams were building these ships. So it's in our history in the Netherlands, and it is everywhere in time and history. You see self-organizing teams making the difference. In the Roman Empire, I think it was not Caesar, but some other emperors who had self-organizing teams who were doing the fights. The soldiers. And there are so many examples of these.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting.
It is, and I suppose if you think about our, like you said, tribal structures, and I know there are lots of people who've sort of researched all sorts of elements of this. You're right, there were leading figures, people who told stories that built the heritage behind the tribe, people who had knowledge about, plants that were toxic, and so they shared that learning and so on. But largely, it was people who organised themselves to be safe and comfortable and so on. So you're right, we've got that inherent genetic and mental sort of model, and I guess we look at, you mentioned the East India Company and so on, and of course there's a sort of a dark side to that, but also it was an incredible time of craftsmanship, and it was an amazing innovation sort of that we saw in some of those discoveries. But it seems like we go through cycles where we know it's craft, and then we try and mechanize it to make it more prolific or something, and then we kind of get this sense that it's all very soulless and it doesn't mean anything and it's all lacking, and then we sort of rediscover. So it's almost like, you might like this because the link to the art world, particularly from the Netherlands, it's like a renaissance happens every now and then, right?
Yeah, and I think that's needed.
Yeah,
it's the S curve, At
the
end of the curve, you always start a new curve. It's a classic. But I think at this moment in time, there are quite a lot of reasons to organize ourselves differently. And because we are so international at Semco Institute, for example, we have a very successful partner in Japan who have 3 offices all over Japan now, and they do lots of trainings and consulting assignments to help companies get themselves more self-organized. And the reason is aging. And Japan is way ahead of us in terms of aging society.
Right.
And they found out that when less people have to do the work to earn the money for more people, you have to change organizations. And the Japanese companies are also quite hierarchical. However, the old Toyota from the Toyota factory was a sort of Ricardo Sember of his time in Japan already. He says the most important person in our company is the mechanic on the work floor. And it's amazing the quality that they built is. You can find the reason for that in the self-organizing culture of Toyota and Lexus.
Yeah, great point. And again, it talks to craft, doesn't it? Because there was such a sense that you wanted to get things right and accurate and almost beautiful and elegant and admired. And I guess what we see in the sort of 21st century version of work is lots of people are fully stacked, they're breathless, they've got back-to-back schedules, and it's almost like at the end of the day they're probably thinking, what craft have I been involved in today? And they probably don't find the answer to that, do they? They probably find it's all a bit vague and a bit, there's nothing to it.
Yeah, well, perhaps we always on the search for self-fulfillment and to do it better. But I see work for some people has become a little bit empty, to be honest.
Yeah, empty, that's the word.
Yeah, and that's perhaps because we over-organize things.
Yeah.
And what I learned from a gentleman in the Netherlands, that I work a lot with, he's a professor, he's called Mathieu Weggeman.
Yep.
And he's written a book, if you want to managing professionals, don't even try. That's roughly the translation of the title.
Yeah.
Because professionals know their job. If you are a professional teacher or a professional plumber or a professional lawyer, you know your job. You don't need to be managed. You perhaps need a soundboard, you need to share knowledge with the people around you, but you don't need a manager because you can manage yourself. Yeah. And there are so many professional organizations that don't get the maximum out of the teams because the managers are blocking that. Yeah. I always compare managers in a team with what we call in the ICT a single point of failure.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a network structure, then if there's a bottleneck in the network that all the information is to go through, that's a single point of failure. If that fails, then the network is down. Yeah. But if you are a manager that wants to control all the information of all the people, then you are blocking these people. Yeah. So, and we think that the essence for leaders of being effective is that you avoid becoming a single point of failure because you should be in control without controlling people. Yeah. And very many managers, how do you say that? They mix up the words being in control and controlling people. Yeah. But it's very nice, inspiring, and easy to be in control without controlling people.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because I was thinking that lots of people would probably be recognising what you're saying, both even if they are managers and also those people who, like in HR, where I sort of practice, have to teach managers and coach them and help them out. And there's been lots of, I suppose you'd say, studies and accusations about management and how it's the single point of failure, as you say. And then if you're a manager, you're like, oh, crikey, I'm only trying to do my best here. And some of it is the system, right? Some of it is the system. And some of it is, you're absolutely right, what you just said, the kind of mindset, which is like, I like being in control. It's like, well, I'm not sure everybody else likes that because you're the one who's calling all the shots and they have no participation in it. And therefore, why on earth would they perform well? But being in control is very different. I really like the subtle mix on that one. Are we genuinely seeing an alternative to perhaps the industrial management model then starting to come through with this self-organized concept and this removal of the emptiness and the build-up of fulfillment? Are you seeing it as a kind of a movement and a step change perhaps?
Yeah, well, first, Taylor actually many years ago was one of the guys about the scientific management thinking.
That's right.
And that was not a bad thing at that time because it brought wealth, and it brought the efficiency, brought us the ability to increase wealth for a large group of people that didn't experience wealth before that. So there was nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But now the times are different because information is flowing more rapidly. Yeah. Production processes are far more flexible. Yeah. And then we see that also in a car factory like Toyota, it can also be done differently. Yeah. And also Ricardo was the owner of a factory. Yeah. And here in the Netherlands, we have a very nice factory called Aldoa. It's a complete self-organized aluminium factory. Ah. And the owner, his name is Aller Drosten. He says, well, I've made it so that I can pick anyone from the street, fit him in the company, and he will start functioning within weeks. Wow. Because it's totally self-organized, there's knowledge sharing, it's the processes are logical, and it's completely self-organized. Yeah. And that's a way of working that fits in the time that we are living in at the moment.
Yeah. And I guess there'll be lots of people listening to this kind of going, yeah, sounds terrific. And then they might go back and start talking to their colleagues or their leaders in their organizations who'll be like, we're not having that. That looks like chaos. There's something about the way it gets repelled or rejected and so on. And you must have been at the sharp end of lots of conversations about that. I mean, what are the normal sort of responses and objections that people put into this kind of thinking?
The most common one is that the people consider it extremely inspiring, and they always think that it works everywhere except in their company. And that's really funny because we found out that self-organization can work in any branch, any craft, any type of company, whether it's a service company or a lawyer or a bank or a production company or a telco. It works everywhere.
Yeah.
The only real thing that makes a difference is the leadership.
Right.
If the leadership is facilitating it, promoting it, and if the leaders are really believers and really want to make the movement, then it works. And otherwise it don't. So the leader is the difference and nothing else.
And that leads me to a sort of thinking that takes a special kind of leader, maybe, because what they've almost got to do is say, how it's been up to now with me in charge is not the best way to be. Does that feel like it? Like a confessional?
Yeah, I recognize it totally because I made the mistake myself. I was fortunately quite young still. I was, I think, 25 or 26. I was the co-founder of the first Dutch commercial internet access provider.
Wow.
We had some non-commercial ones, these were foundations, but we were the first to do it on a commercial basis. We were the first in the world to put internet in a box, sell it in the stores. And more stressful was that we were the first ones in the world who decided to go for a flat fee.
Okay.
And we did not know at all what our costs would be, but we thought, well, that's easier, understandable for our customers, and it worked out very well.
Okay.
But it was a big gamble because we did not know at all how we would end up.
No.
So, but we were growing because of all this quite rapidly.
Yeah.
So in a few years, I think in 10 months' time or so, I was having a discussion with my partner Simon, the co-founder, and we were completely stressed out. We were working over 100 hours per week, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
I hear sometimes people say, well, work 100 hours per week, and then I see them on Saturday morning in the supermarket. Well, that's not possible. Then you don't work, then you work perhaps 80 hours per week, which is also stupid. It's not healthy to work 80 hours, but not 100. But so 100 is so much that you have to work every day, and you have just time for some sleep and to eat something. But you can't go to the supermarket to buy your groceries. You have to buy all sort of unhealthy food. So it was not my best period in terms of health.
Yeah.
And still we were completely stressed, and half the company is waiting for our decisions.
Right.
So Simon and I, we were sitting in his office. He was the technical guy, so we had all these buzzing screens, and it was way before the wireless area that we live in now. So all sort of cables, and the pizza boxes, and cigarette ashtrays, like an old-fashioned IT office. And we were sitting there. We exhausted, and we said, well, we can't carry on like this. But what shall we do? Say, well, we have to leave the decisions to our people. Said Simon, that's a great idea. They will have far better ideas than we have. And then I said, but perhaps they start making mistakes. Of course they make mistakes. But then we said to each other, that's our responsibility because we make the decision to leave decisions to them. So we are not going to complain about mistakes. We will help them when they make a mistake. And that was later on, I'm owner now of a company, co-owner of a company, shareholder in a company that works with Amy Edmondson, for example, from the Fearless organization, her, I think.
Yeah.
And I know now that this is called psychological safety. What we created there. But I didn't know that word then, I was 25 years old.
Yeah.
But it was psychological safety. And by not complaining about mistakes, but supporting people when they make a mistake, we built a support system. And that was how we could grow further. And it's amazing what happened. I was last week invited to a cycling event with an ex-colleague of ours who started at the help desk of Euronet, in the 90s. He's now one of the most successful ICT entrepreneurs in the Netherlands.
Wow.
Another guy who started as a trainee in our company, really, he's a billionaire now. He's the co-founder of Backbase. You should look that up.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. But we facilitated entrepreneurship, and I can't claim any credits over their success. But one thing I know, we always stimulated them to take the risk, take the step, make the move, follow your heart, do the right thing. And that paid out very well, not only for our company, but also for most of the people. I really think it was, special.
A special moment. Like you say, you've now got a name for it, psychological safety. So that's why sometimes people kind of like it, that we can categorize these things. But also, I'm guessing this helped you really appreciate when you found the Ricardo story. Like, oh, wow, that's kind of what we did. We let go, we stood back, but we made sure people felt like they had our support. Because I think that's another potential myth that people talk about self-organizing. They mean, what, so nobody is in charge and nobody looks after? It's like, actually, no, it's the opposite. Everybody's in charge and everybody looks after, right?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, what we found out when we went to Brazil with a team to start working with Ricardo and his team, we call them the Guardians, by the way, the whole team of Ricardo. Yeah, they're really cool. They really helped us keeping the culture alive in the first years.
Yeah.
But what struck me is that Ricardo had a surprising amount of managers actually in his organization. And there was one big difference. They were elected by the people, so they would never be bossy, but they were more facilitators, actually.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference, of course. But you can't do without managers. And the beauty is, as soon as people have the freedom to become a self-organizing team, the first thing they do is set rules.
Yeah.
They need rules, because if you don't have rules, like a football game, football game without rules becomes a mess.
Yeah.
So you need some rules.
Yeah.
But there's one big difference between a self-organizing company or team and a team that gets the rules from the boss.
Yeah.
They think of their rules, so they feel ownership and responsibility of the rules because these are their own rules. Yeah. They invented them, and that's a big difference.
Hey friends, it's Perry Timms, host of Tomorrow's People. In HR, support is key. Supporting your work, your people, and your organisation. Personio truly gets that. They've got your back with top-notch support in your time zone. Visit personio.com and see how they can support all your HR work. That's personio.com.
It is. And whilst we're on football teams and rules, I have a strong admiration for the 1974 Dutch World Cup squad that could play anywhere, total football, right?
Yeah.
Which is a similar principle, isn't it? It's like, go where you feel is right. Don't be constrained by where somebody positions you on a chart. But if you feel like you want to run at goal, go for it. Yeah. Nice. Good. I wanted to touch. Yeah, it always comes back into me. I did want to touch on that ownership thing though, because I think there's a couple of organisations I know which are cooperatives, and so they have ownership models where actually people aren't just employees; they are literally the shareholders.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one form of. I guess you'd say democratizing the nature of it. They don't necessarily have to be self-organizing, but you feel different about a company, don't you, when you've got that kind of stake?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we always, in the company that I'm shareholder in, also in the Semco Institute, most of the people are shareholder. Yeah. We always try to facilitate it.
Yeah.
The funny is that Ricardo is not always convinced that everyone should always have shares.
Okay.
Because there are many ways of stimulate ownership and responsibility without stock, actually.
True.
So it's not necessary because not in every company is possible.
No.
And for example, I work now for a few days per week also as director of the economic board of the area where I live in.
Okay.
And there I have to stimulate cooperation between government, entrepreneurs and educational institutes.
Yeah.
And it's a foundation, it's a non-profit that I run, you know?
Yeah.
So you can't be owner of a non-profit because a foundation doesn't have any owners.
Exactly.
Yeah, but still there's lots of ownership on the purpose that we have. And what we do, we try to stimulate this. It's professional organization typically. We have also the specialists on board on energy transition and on human capital and these sort of things.
Yeah.
And we stimulate the ownership by really, really listening to their opinion. And they are very well networked. They are specialists in their field. And you know, as simple as why should I even think that I know it better than them as a director?
Yeah, love it. And it talks to things like expertise and it talks to things like passion. But you hit on a really interesting word there that I'm going to sort of pick out, which is listening. Because I think if we look at some of the surveys around workplaces around the world, it's the opposite of listening. People are saying, I'm not engaged, I don't care enough, nobody's bothered about me, I'm turning up for a paycheck, it's not how I want it to be. And I don't know about you, but I find that incredibly sad.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And the whole sense of listening is your experience of self-organising environments and more collaborative enterprises. Listening is a key activity. It happens. It's more natural. It's more part of who you are and what you are. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, definitely. Well, to be honest, I think every leader should focus on listening more than on talking.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't have the ability to listen, then you never will find out the talents of the people around you. And I'm obviously a talker, so I learned to shut up my mouth. And I have a very simple rule for that. You know, because it's for me very easy to talk most of everyone in every meeting. And I know that's not handy. So what I do, if I have a 1 hour meeting and there are 5 people, including me, in the room, I won't talk more than 12 minutes.
Nice.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
And that's a very simple rule. Just make sure that you watch or a clock on your screen or on your iPhone or what now. You see the clock and make sure that you approximately have no more than 12 minutes. And if it's 6 people, then no more than 10 minutes. And then everyone is equal. And then you see a relaxation starting in the meeting. And as if you are chairing a meeting or hosting a meeting as a moderator, you could also be aware of that. Give all the people approximately the same amount of time in every meeting. Then the chances are very big that you hear the most of these people.
That's a really good point, you know, because that talks to like self-awareness and emotional intelligence, doesn't it, about you? Like you said, you like to talk. It's a natural thing for you to want to be exuberant and vibrant and share. But at the same time, I guess you're absolutely right. How can you listen and talk at the same time? You can't. It's just that simple,
it's
right?
Impossible. It's impossible. Yeah. Yeah. And the nice thing of it, in our culture, and I'm not quite sure whether that's Anglo-Saxon or just a Western culture, but the most extrovert person dominates most of the meetings.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that he makes the best decisions. And the introvert people, who sometimes are a bit shy of speaking out loud or need more time to think about things, they are very often being dominated, so you won't hear their opinion. Yeah. And what we learned from the people from Brazil, from Ricardo, is that they did not have only the right, no, they even had the obligation to come back to a decision that has been made if they would have second thoughts 1 or 2 days or 3 days later. Yeah. And if you create that situation with that psychological safety, that people feel safe to give their opinion, even if it's 3 days later.
Yeah.
You know, that is far more effective for making decisions. Yeah. Because I think it's around 70% of the people in the world, I don't know the exact figure, but it was more than 2/3,
right,
that not always knows what to say in the moment. And they always think, oh shit, I should have said that when they drive home or they wake up the other morning. I should have said that. Oh, stupid. Now the decision has been made. And if then you have the right to come back to the decision, then there's far less stress. Yeah. The quality of the decisions goes up. The results of the organization go up. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's good that there's some science behind it, because I think everybody who's ever had a job interview probably just went, yeah, that happened to me in a job interview. So I totally know where you're coming from with that. What I found really interesting about that, a number of things really, is that there are a lot of people who are doing what I would call performative listening. It's almost like the theatre of listening. They're not really listening. They're just kind of faking it in order to get their response over and get their point across. But what you talked about there was your self-organised way of saying, this is how other people can like work with me, is a bit of a thing I've seen in self-organising, where you do have to declare or narrate your working a lot more, because there is no one telling you how to be. So therefore you almost have to help people get over assumptions and understand why things happen in a certain way. Do you see that? Do you see in self-organising teams there is an expansive form of communication in a good way about how we work in, how we're going to make that decision, how do you feel, what's going on? Do you see that?
Well, that's a very large question, actually.
It is, I know.
Because it has several levels. Well, let me start. When you start with self-organisation, in the beginning, the level of communication will go up. Yeah. Because people have to find ways to relate to each other. And if not one single person is making the decision, but we have to make the decisions together, that takes a lot of communication. Yeah. So in the beginning, the amount of communication goes up. Yeah. But later, the amount of communication goes down because people know how to find each other. But having said that, you have to keep on working on it, because we see now one of the companies I'm involved in that they take self-organization for granted somehow. Right. And what then happens is that it's not really self-organizing anymore. Then people stand up and become still sort of a manager. Okay. So you have to actively keep on working on it. Yeah. And I know from one of my favorite companies in our country, it's called Niverplast. Mm-hmm. It's, how do I translate that in English? They build actually machines that do the shrink wrapping of sandwiches.
Right, I get it. Yeah,
it's a shrink wrapping machine factory.
Yeah.
They are self-organized from day one.
Right. And
the company is now roughly 40 years old, I think.
Wow.
Founded by a guy who really wanted to have a completely violentless organization.
Oh yeah.
And he think that every type of pressure you put on people is violent. So there are no targets, there are no opening hours, there are no vacations. You really totally self-managed. There's only one moment which is voluntary fixed, but it's voluntary, but everyone sticks with, because it's the lunch. And it's 12 o'clock, then a chef is making the most delicious lunch with the most delicious fresh ingredients, and they are all there with the plate, ready for the chef. And it's not obligation, but they're all there because it's so good.
Wow.
But the founder, Gerrit-Jan Nieuwenhuis, is not really active anymore on a day-to-day basis, except for one thing, keeping the culture alive. Because he found out that after years, without hierarchy, there was a new hierarchy arising. The people that were there longer than others thought that they had a special status.
Right.
So what he's doing now, he's doing special pizza sessions with the newcomers, and he excludes the old-fashioned guys and start with the newcomers to work in their ideas, and gives them the freedom to implement it. And that is, of course, not totally self-managed, because he's making, as a leader, as an owner, making a decision here.
Yeah.
But with only one purpose: to keep the culture of self-organization alive. Yeah. Because any sort of hierarchy and any sort of thing, well, that's how we've always done it, so we keep on doing that, is dangerous for the existence of the company in the future.
Yeah. I love that. I've seen some examples where it has been a very strong leader figure who then says, look, my strength, though, is not that I'm going to be the all that you will be, and I'm declaring that I want you to fill gaps and I'll do something else. And then when they go, it slips back into the old ways. So I guess that's what we're hearing here, is that somebody, and you use the word guardian as Ricardo's terminology, somebody has to kind of guard those kind of things really nicely, right, with the spirit of it in mind. Yeah, nice. I really like that. My thoughts go to how the future might start to look with a lot more self-organised entities, be they social enterprises, be they health, education, be they manufacturing, governments even. And you started by saying that, you know, you are working in a sort of governmental environment to look more at self-organising in societies. Are you feeling optimistic about the fact that the self-organising future is a better one?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
great.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic always if I look at the leadership in our country, if they will adopt that behavior. But I'm doing it on a regional level, and many things of the SEMCO style we implemented. Wow. For example, in every board meeting, we leave one chair free for anyone of the work organization to join the meeting, and that closed the power gap.
Yeah.
And that's really cool, because power distance can be very counterproductive. So if you close the power gap, then there's instant psychological safety in the organization. Communication improves, and the interaction between the leaders and the working floor increases instantly. So it's amazing what the result is actually. Yeah. But we also try to work on a level of and it is for me difficult to translate, I realize. We are not the same, but we are sort of equal. But we leave the board members in their role, because a board member or a mayor of a city, which is in my board, for example, they have a different sort of role. Yeah. And the director of a company has a different role, and the people on the work floor, the communication manager, or especially, they all have a role. So we are not equal, but we are from the same value. So we talk at the same level, but we realize that everyone has his own role. Yeah. But I don't know how to translate. We say in Dutch, we say it's niet gelijk, maar gelijkwaardig. We are not the same, but we are from the same value. That's what we say.
I get that. I'm going to try and do my best to sort of play that back and give you perhaps the English phrase for it. But
I couldn't find it.
No,
I can't look it up now and talk about it with you.
No, don't worry. But it feels to me like there's something about we're all different, but we can all make our own difference, or something like that. I mean, I'm going to play with that after this, Arko. But I totally get the spirit of it, and if anything, I do, from my knowledge of Dutch culture and working with people in the Netherlands and so on, I do find that actually comes across very loudly, I suppose, when I'm talking to people. It is almost like there is difference, there is rank, there are roles, but actually there's a kind of an equalness to it all. So I'll think
we're all important, and everyone counts.
Those
and no one feels better. Perhaps you could say no one feels better than the other. Ooh. Maybe you are the chairman of a board, and someone else is an engineer on the work floor. But no one feels better than the other. So the value that everyone brings in is appreciated. And then you get the best decisions.
Yeah, and I would say that, from my sort of exploration of companies who are really trying to get with the sort of modern version post-COVID, whatever kind of future with artificial intelligence and so on's going on, they are now much more concerned about what is the experience of work and how can I keep people interested and look after them, but also recognise, they may not be here forever, but while they're here, let's make it work. And I think there's a lot more progressive thinking, but maybe not quite the action to follow it. That's what I'm kind of picking up. So I share your optimism. I think the nature of the challenges of the world, those wicked problems you started talking about at the beginning of this, are things that we have got to fundamentally rally to together and self-organise our way out of it.
And what also struck me is you talked about listening. We talked about listening earlier in this podcast. As soon as you have a culture where all the people listen to each other internally in the organization, it also somehow makes it easier to listen to people outside your organization.
Great point.
So I learned once culture eats strategy for breakfast, but I learned that behavior actually eats culture as a snack.
Yeah.
And as soon as the behavior inside the organization is like, we listen to each other, we respect each other, there's some relaxation happening in the organization, and it's also easy to take that approach to your customers. But if there's tension and hierarchy internally in the organization, you also take that to your customers somehow. Yeah. So I really think this culture helps you to be more customer friendly.
I'd agree with that, and I think we've seen the bad side of that with some of the corporate scandals, right, where people go, oh, that's a bad company or that's a bad culture. It's like, no, what's going on there is bad behaviour, which has corrupted the culture and has kind of, jeopardised the sanctity that company was trying to create for its people. So I'm totally with you. The behaviours absolutely set the culture, which creates the environment that means people can do their best and customers get the best impacts. I mean, it's almost like the way we can kind of go no-brainer, but we recognise there's hard yards, right, in shifting from a system that's very much about controlling to what you said, which is about shared collaborative control of where we're going and what we're doing. Arko, that's brilliant. I've got so many notes and threads and things to look up now, and I'm hoping people listening to this are as inspired as you and I are about what we stand for in the future. But anything before we close that you want to leave us with before we say goodbye?
Yeah, well, I think that judging people is always, something that is blocking us to have more effective organization, and being preoccupied about people is also a risk. So what I would really recommend everyone is try to look differently at the people around you. People that can make big decisions at home can also make big decisions at their work. Yeah. But if you can't see that quality, then you will never unleash it in the people around you. Yeah. So try to have an open mind and look at what people actually can do instead of what they can't do. Yeah. And that's for me the big thing. Because honestly, people that can make big decisions at home can make big decisions at the work floor. And ordinary people are capable of achieving extraordinary results. And that's the whole philosophy of self-organization. I love it because it's more fun, it's more healthy, the work-life balance increases, people take more ownership, people feel appreciated, you get more appreciation in return. So everything is positive. And yes, people will make mistakes, but what I decided for myself, because people always make mistakes, I make mistakes, we all do. But in a self-organized company, mistakes are not that damaging because we learn quicker, we share them quicker, and we improve ourselves in a quicker way. And that's so important to face the challenges that the world is offering us the coming years. So really, if we can build this sort of support system that people feel free to make mistakes and share them so we can learn from them, then we have a culture of continuous improvement which will make our world better.
What a lovely way to finish. I'm absolutely feeling the heartbeat racing in a good way now, because I think what I've just heard is that with those wicked problems, we need tomorrow's people who are ordinary people to be their best extraordinary. I absolutely love it, Arko. Thank you for such a nice way to wrap it up. Well, that was every bit as fascinating, if not more, than I thought it was going to be. And I will make sure that people are following your work more actively and so on. But thank you again for lending your wisdom and passion and just the whole sense of really what it's all about. So
thank you for asking the right questions and hosting me, because it was a great honor.
Thank you, Arko. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy listening, folks. Thanks very much. That was Arko Van Brakel. Thank you. Ciao for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of Tomorrow's People, please subscribe and check out our previous episodes from wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you want to transform your people processes, head to personio.com.